Headed down the shore? Skip the hassle. Let Beach Caddy handle the heavy lifting. Bellhop and beach cart rentals are available in Ocean City, Sea Isle, Avalon, Stone Harbor, and Wildwood. Use the promo code Jimbo for 10% off bellhop and cart rentals. Beach Caddy takes the stress out of your Jersey Shore trip. Go to beachcaddy.app. Use the promo code Jimbo for 10% off your move-in, move-out bellhop service and beach cart rentals. Best beach carts at the Jersey Shore. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly Sports History for August 8th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Feel Good Friday edition of the podcast. We got a lot to get to today, so let's jump right into it. First and foremost, Eagles open up the preseason against the Cincinnati Bengals yesterday down at the Link. For the standings, they won 34-27. That really means nothing, though. Some of the takeaways from the game, though, I think overall it was solid for everyone. Obviously, first quarter, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they're just good. And they made the Eagles defense that was out there to start the first quarter look absolutely silly. But that's going to happen to a lot of teams this year. Starters were not really out there, so not necessarily super concerned with that. However, Ja'Cory Bennett, the job is yours, man. The job is there for the taking. Keely Ringo and Jackson did not show me much of anything. Again, just made to look silly with Burrow and Chase out there. But again, that'll happen. Jahad Campbell didn't look great, but Vic Fangio has acknowledged that and said a lot of it depends upon he just needs more reps. He did show his athleticism, though, on that tipped pass that he almost intercepted. Came out of nowhere and almost probably should have later in the season, probably will come up with that. Dude's going to be a stud. It was all over the place, like I said. And once you kind of harness that and get him more reps and experience, a lot of those guys were playing into the second half, which is good. Tanner McKee might be the best backup quarterback in the NFL. He could probably start for 5 or 6 teams. And I think my biggest takeaway, granted, early, I believe, I was at my son's basketball game, so I wasn't able to listen fully. But I believe that did come the first 2 drives where he took them down for 10 points. I think that came against the Bengals' first-team defense, or at least some of their starters. He looked, to me, even against the backups, he looked like an NFL quarterback. So if I'm the New Orleans Saints, if I'm some of those other teams that don't have rookies like the Giants and Browns, I'm on the phone with Howie right now saying, hey, what do you need? I'm looking specifically at the Saints, though, because of the connection with Kellen Moore. But Tanner McKee, I think the asking price should be relatively high because, God forbid, if Jalen goes out, I'm comfortable with Tanner McKee out there. He looked like an NFL quarterback. I don't even think it's close. I think he was the GOAT of the game yesterday. Just played extremely well, looked good doing it, and he's your backup quarterback. And I know if teams do come calling, it's going to have to be a hefty price for Tanner McKee because the other guys are just young with lack of experience. So we're in good hands, God forbid, if Jalen goes down. Some other notes and things that I noticed. A.J. Dillon reminds me so much of LeGarrette Blount. It was kind of ridiculous. So I thought that's going to be good. And then couple him with Will Shipley, who it's almost like the Eagles behind Saquon Barkley. They have 2 guys that do a lot of the same things that Saquon does, just differently. It's almost like the thunder and lightning. So if we need to kind of put Saquon on a pitch count, I'm comfortable with either of those guys behind the offensive line, depending on what the situation calls for. But Dillon did remind me a lot of LeGarrette Blount. Johnny Wilson looked good, and I liked specifically the pass where he went up and just used his height to snatch that ball. Maybe Kevin Patullo can put something together in a red zone package for him, but dude is so tall, and if he can just do that on a consistent basis, like the old Julio Jones alley-oop play, that's going to be a huge deal for this team in the red zone. Darius Cooper made a case to be on the team with a good game. But Kevin Patullo, yes, it's preseason, so it's going to be a very vanilla game plan, but did seem as though it was a more balanced attack than what it was last year. I don't know if that game plan dictates that. They wanted to see McKee throw it or what, but there were more throws. So I liked it. I like the more balanced attack. Obviously, they're probably going to try to establish the run first, which age-old NFL strategy, but I did think it was a very good mix. Again, it's preseason, so you don't know what they were showing, what they wanted to show. Tyler Steen looked good. He was the only starting offensive lineman that was out there. Looked very well, so I'm confident with him kind of filling in that Mekhi Becton role. And it's always good, and this is Nick Sirianni being Nick Sirianni, but it's always good to see a tush push in preseason just to kind of stick it to the NFL and all those teams. But overall, lots of positives. I think there's some things that need to be worked on, specifically the cornerback opposite of Quinyon Mitchell. Like I said, Jacorian, it's your move, bro. If you can step up, the job is yours for the taking. But overall, I'll take it. Back to practice, I believe, tomorrow. But Tanner McKee is our GOAT. Lots of good things. Jahad Campbell, like I said, is going to be an absolute stud. And now we're on to the Browns. They have some joint practices next week leading up to next Saturday's preseason game. But we'll take it. And Tanner McKee, congratulations on being the GOAT of the game. Phil's back in action tonight. Christopher Sanchez on the mound down in Texas to take on the Rangers, which is not a good spot for the Phillies at all. They're 6-14 in their last 20 against the Rangers, but even more concerning is all-time. They're 2-12 down in Arlington and have lost 10 straight. It's been 11 years since their last win. They have not won in Texas since opening day in 2014, that crazy 14-10 game where Cliff Lee just got shelled, but somehow the Phillies were able to come back and win. So buckle up. It could be an interesting weekend down in Arlington. I'm heading down to, or up, I should say, to the Iron Pigs game tonight. Jose Alvarado was back in action for them last night. Looked pretty good. David Robertson looked pretty good up there. And lots of talk yesterday, thanks to a certain Philly sports blog who almost ripped off my rant the other day after Alvarado's apology. Essentially said it's okay to forgive him. I guess we're ahead of the curve on that. So if you know any Philly sports blogs that highlight one of the main roads in Philadelphia, you know who I'm talking about. But there was a big article about that, and lots of people talking about, I can't forgive him. He's this, he's that. And look, like I said, dude made a mistake, and I think too much in our society, we don't give people a second chance. He screwed up. It was a big screw up. Really hurt this team for a large chunk of this season. However, we do need him to give some guys a break, rest some of these guys going into the postseason. Like I said, I could care less if they, or couldn't care less if they throw him until his arm falls off, but you at least got to forgive him. I'm not saying forget, but forgive, move on. We started the year off with forgiveness. Let's continue to forgive. And to that specific sports blog, like I tell everybody, just give your boy some credit. That's all I ask. Give me some credit on my original take that you took and made into a post on your blog. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying. But Phillies Rangers tonight. Christopher Sanchez on the mound for the Phils. All right, let's do some housekeeping before we get into the meat of this podcast today. First, let's start with the question of the day recap from yesterday. Sixers are bringing back the black jerseys, and it was unanimous. 100% of you who voted are glad they're back. And like I said, I am thrilled. I love those jerseys, and I'm looking forward to them coming back. We got some Little League news. The Glenmore Little League out in Chester County, out by where I grew up, They are playing this afternoon at 3 for the Mid-Atlantic Championship against a team from Maryland. The Glenmore team, the Glenmore Eagles, have been very hot in the postseason tournaments. All of the PA championships and now the Mid-Atlantic. They have not been beaten yet. So they look to punch their ticket to Williamsport today. So we'll be rooting for the Glenmore Eagles from Chester County to make a run in the Little League World Series. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok, on Instagram at Philly Jimbo. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. If you're new, welcome. And while you're at it, leave a comment, review, like, subscribe. All those things really help the algorithm and get me into the flow. Now that I'm in the new studio, a lot of the clips that I've been putting on social media have really kind of branched out my following. So again, if you're new, thank you, but it's still a little bit of a grassroots movement as we grow this thing. Union are in action this weekend. They take on Toronto tomorrow down at Subaru Park. It's a stretch run, man, and the schedule is favorable for the Union down the stretch, who sit atop the Eastern Conference standings in the MLS. And then yesterday's trivia question, we talked about the 2011 Eagles dream team, quote unquote, and I asked who are the 3 quarterbacks that played. Michael Vick, Vince Young, and Mike Kafka, who is now a coach for the New York Giants. So thank you to everybody who reached out. I mistakenly said started. Kafka did not start a game that season. So those 3 quarterbacks played for the 2011 Eagles Dream Team. All right, let's get into our top 5 for the first 25 years of the century. Yesterday we did the worst acquisitions, and now we're done with the negative. It's going to be positive here on out as we try to will our teams to positivity and all the good stuff that we need. So we're going to take a look at the top 5 acquisitions, either free agency or trade. And this was a tough list to make, I have to say, because there were so many. It's a deep list. I fully expect there to be a lot of debate on this, whether it's on my social media or the Discord channel, which is the first link in the description. But let's start with the honorable mentions. And any one of these guys certainly could have been on the list. Roy Halladay. One of the biggest trades, came in and just had an outstanding 2010 season. Did not make the top 5. Brad Lidge, who was a very key part of that 2008 season, helped lead the Phillies to their first World Series championship since 1980. Did not make the list. Raul Banez, who was kind of one of those moves. Yeah, he was like 35 when they brought him in, but played a big role on those teams as well. Just couldn't get them over the hump. Danny Briere, who was huge for the Flyers in playoff games. Chris Pronger, who was a key part of that 2010 Stanley Cup Finals run. Michael Vick, who put up an MVP-type season in 2010. And this guy wasn't here for more than half a season, but did make his presence felt for the Sixers, and that was Jimmy Butler. If he stayed longer, he could have made the list, but he just wasn't here long enough for that. All right, so let's get into the list. The top 5 acquisitions for the first 25 years of the century. Number 5, Bryce Harper. What can you say? He's going to be here for another 6 years, but immediately gave this team a much-needed shot in the arm, brought in some swag, has led them to 3 straight playoff berths, a World Series in 2022, and is going to be a key piece for this team going down the stretch this year. Number 4, Terrell Owens, and he came in and impact immediately felt. First play of the preseason was an 81-yard bomb down at the link, and that's all you need to know. The crowd fell in love with him, helped lead them to the Super Bowl, and came back after a broken leg to put up what would have been likely the MVP of that game had the Eagles been able to pull it out. So T.O. is number 4 on the list. Number 3, Cliff Lee. Take your pick. Pretty much, I'm looking the first time they got him, but even when they brought him back, he was a good addition to the team, helped lead them back to the World Series in 2009. So Cliff Lee is number 3 on the list. Number 2, A.J. Brown. Difference maker. As soon as they bring him in, Eagles go to the Super Bowl. 2 years later, we win the Super Bowl. For my money, the best wide receiver in the league. Seems like a good dude as well. Just has really embraced Philly, loves being here, wants to finish out his career here, and a great draft day move for Howie Roseman. And that's why Howie's just so great. Like, he recognized, okay, I messed up with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I messed up with Jalen Reagor. So you know what? I'm just going to use a first-round pick and trade for a bona fide star. And A.J. Brown, the record speaks for himself when he's in the lineup. The Eagles are essentially unbeatable. So huge acquisition for the Eagles. And now the number 1 spot on the list, and this may spark some debate, but I had to look at it in terms of just the impact on not only the team, but the city itself. And that was Nick Foles when they brought him back. Didn't expect much of anything. Had to be talked about or talked out of retirement. Not expected to play or anything like that. And I don't think the Eagles win the Super Bowl if any other quarterback. I mean, who are you going to have? Is Chase Daniel going to lead the Eagles to the Super Bowl that year? I don't think so. So Nick Foles, when they reacquired him, that to me is the greatest acquisition in the past 25 years. Kind of under the radar, just like, hey, we need somebody back there to back up Carson, but Carson is our guy. And when the unthinkable happened, Nick stepped right in and led us to the Super Bowl. All right, who's too high? Who's too low? Who needs to be on the list? Who needs to be off the list? Like I said, this was a tough list to make. I think any of the guys that were honorable mentions could have made it. I think you could certainly make the case that somebody else needs to be number 1, but Nick Foles. But for me, leading the team to the first ever Super Bowl as a backup, when you had to be talked out of retirement, I think that qualifies as the top spot and the top acquisition on this list. But let me know your thoughts. 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. Hit me up. Let me know who's too high, who's too low, who would you add, and then any of my socials as well as the Discord channel. But that does lead us to today's question of the day. Is Nick Foles the best acquisition in the past 25 years in the city of Philadelphia? I'm going to have to say yes because of what he meant to that team. And yes, both Super Bowls were great. And that's why A.J. Brown is higher on the list. But as the old adage goes, you never forget your first. And we'll never forget the feeling of the end of that game and just seeing Nick Foles go toe-to-toe with the GOAT and coming out with the Super Bowl MVP. But let me know your thoughts. Is Nick Foles the biggest acquisition or best acquisition in Philadelphia sports in the past 25 years? And if he's not, who would you put over top of him? Let's have some fun here on a Feel Good Friday. This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, a growing community of diehard fans turning their sports passion into something special. Whether you're looking for unique shows, want to launch your own podcast but don't have the time, or need production services, the ClashingConferences.com has everything you need. Explore fan-driven content, become a member, or tap into their media services to level up your brand. That's ClashingConferences.com, where fans' voices get heard. Proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network. Don't forget to check me out on the new members podcast that dropped yesterday. That's available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. Had a lot of fun with the crew there, so go check that out. We talk a little Phillies, little Eagles, and best all-time sports movies.
It's time for Fridays with AI, where we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Every Friday, only on This Day in Philly Sports History.
It's action-packed today, and yes, that's right. It is time for Fridays with AI, brought to you by Philly Goat. We've been talking a lot about Devin, 10-year-old girl who is doing great things. Go to Philly Goat, check out her Philly Fanatic-inspired shirt, where 10% of the proceeds go to help out CHOP in Philly. She's doing amazing things, so if you can, go support Devin. Don't forget to use that promo code. And, of course, it's Eagles season. Go get your Eagles gear to get ready for this upcoming season. But shout out to Devin. We've been shouting her out all week. She's doing amazing things. So go support Chop, support Devin, and buy that Philly Fanatic shirt. All right, so we're in the dog days of summer right now, and it's Eagles preseason. We're in the middle of a pennant race. So much going on. We've been doing the top 5 lists for the first 25 of the century. So I thought, when AI comes to visit, why don't we have a little bit of fun with AI today? And I asked AI this week to play Dr. Frankenstein. And I asked AI, using the qualities of every and all Philadelphia athletes of all time, let's create the ultimate Philly athlete. And AI did not disappoint. So let's go through and see the parts that AI pieced together to create the ultimate Philly athlete. Starting first with the brain, AI said use Jason Kelce's brain. He was the quarterback of the offensive line, had a Hall of Fame career, was an integral part of the Eagles offense for so many years, and helped and was a big part of leading the Eagles to that Super Bowl win in Super Bowl 52. So we're using Jason Kelce's brain. And then we move on to the heart. And AI said this wasn't even a debate. Allen Iverson, toughest player pound for pound in NBA history, possibly the toughest player pound for pound in Philadelphia sports history, quite possibly the toughest player pound for pound in all of sports history. Was little short guy, under 6 foot, even though he was listed as 6 foot, went into the land of the Giants all the time. Body took a beating, but he just kept coming. So we're going to use AI's heart. And then AI did kind of go on some little bit of qualities more so than body parts, but went to strength next. And we're going to use Reggie White's strength to build our ultimate Philly sports athlete. He would throw defensive linemen around like they were rag dolls. And if you've never seen Reggie White play, look up the clips, man. He would his bull rush, he would take one hand and just swat offensive linemen like flies. So we're going to use Reggie White's strength on our ultimate Philly athlete. And then we went to speed. And there was one guy, Deshaun Jackson, one of the fastest guys, huge deep threat. Another one of those guys that was small, but using Deshaun Jackson's speed. There were a couple honorable mentions that AI was struggling with. Said AI's first step was deadly, but we already used his heart. And then Bryce Harper's speed around the bases is second to none, but we decided on Deshaun Jackson's speed for our ultimate Philly sports athlete. Then went to agility, and that was Shady McCoy. Shady was just shifty. As I'm saying this, I can just picture him running and then just bouncing out of the way. So we're going to use the agility of Shady McCoy for our athlete. And then it came to hands. And AI has jokes, immediately said Freddie Mitchell. And I thought that was funny. And then I was like, I got to end this segment if AI was serious. And then it said, no, I'm just kidding. But I would like to thank my hands. But AI essentially said an athlete has two hands. So we're going to take one hand from one player and another hand from another player. And we're going to use the hands of Mike Schmidt, who was essentially a vacuum cleaner, as AI said, out at third base for the Phillies, as one hand, and then A.J. Brown for the other set of hands. Could have went with a lot of different things, but A.J. Brown just had using his size in his hands. So Mike Schmidt and A.J. Brown's hands. And then it went to the clutch gene. And AI said, let's use Jimmy Rollins' clutch gene. And debated it between he and Ryan Howard, but Rollins came up with bigger moments. I think for a longer stretch, Ryan Howard might have been more clutch, but when the lights were the brightest, AI said, specifically backing up, saying the Phillies were the team to beat with an MVP season, the 2009 NLDS double in the bottom of the ninth. AI did say you can't go wrong with either, but if we're building the ultimate athlete, we're going with Jimmy Rollins' clutch gene. And then it went to the soul and like the intangibles, the things you can't really see. And it went Chase Utley. Chase was a gritty player, did all those little things that the team needed, wasn't afraid to get dirty, wasn't afraid to get hit by a pitch. So we're going to take the soul of Chase Utley to put into our Ultimate Philly Athlete. AI did mention that Chase was a huge fan favorite, so that played a role in it as well. Winning DNA, we're going to inject the DNA of Bobby Clark into our Philadelphia Athlete. He was tough, two-time champion, and just did whatever it took to win, whether it was scoring goals, fighting, dishing out assists. So the winning DNA of Bobby Clark is going into our Athlete. And then toughness. And there's only one person. This was a slam dunk. Brian Dawkins played through pain, played with intensity, clean intensity, I might add, and just represents the toughness and the grittiness of Philadelphia more so than any other athlete. So we're doing the toughness of Brian Dawkins. And then finally, the leadership. And we went back and forth with this one because AI sometimes is a little behind the times. Had to remind AI that Jalen Hurts did win a Super Bowl. And then once I reminded AI of that, said then it's a slam dunk. Jalen Hurts, he's a champion. He's a winner wherever he goes. He's respected by his teammates. He's a quiet leader. But when he's on the field and when he speaks, people listen. So there is our ultimate Philly sports athlete. We're going to go with the brain of Jason Kelce, the heart of Allen Iverson, the strength of Reggie White, the speed of Deshaun Jackson, the agility of LaShawn McCoy, the hands of Mike Schmidt and A.J. Brown, the clutch gene of Jimmy Rollins, the soul of Chase Utley, the winning DNA of Bobby Clark, the toughness of B-Dog, and the leadership of Jalen. What do you think? Anybody else that AI should have added if we're making the ultimate Philly athlete? We had some fun with this, AI and I, this week, but let me know your thoughts on the ultimate Philly athlete on a Feel Good Friday here. We're having some fun. That does lead to today's trivia question, though. We are going into Texas to take on the Rangers, and there are two players who have had 35 or more home runs for both the Rangers and the Phillies. Who are they? Hit me up anywhere on social media, the Back to the Future voice and text line, as well as the Discord channel. All right, and then finally today, August 8th. What do we got going on today? First, we're going to go back to 1988. And on this day in 1988, the Phillies and the Cubs were scheduled to play the first ever night game at Wrigley Field. Left fielder Phil Bradley led off the game with a home run. Ryan Sandberg, another Philly tie, hit a home run in the bottom of the first. Unfortunately, after that, the rains came in and the game ended up being postponed, robbing Phil Bradley of history, robbing the Phillies of being part of the first night game, even though technically they were part of the first night game. It wasn't the first official night game. The first night game at Wrigley Field did take place the next night. Unfortunately, the Mets get credit for playing in the first night game at Wrigley Field. Then we're going to go to 1999. And the Phillies lose to the Diamondbacks 7-4, but Bobby Abreu had himself a day, went 5 for 5 with a double, 2 RBI, and just wasn't enough as the Phillies lose to the Diamondbacks. And if you're keeping score at home, or if you're a regular listener of this, you know the answer to this, but the Phillies' record for hits in a game belongs to Connie Ryan, who did that back in 1953. And then finally, in 2009, UFC came to Philly. UFC 101 occurred at the Wachovia Center. It was the first time UFC ever came to Philly. The main event was BJ Penn versus Kenny Florian. BJ Penn won by submission, and that was for the lightweight championship. Also featured a match between Anderson Silva and Forrest Griffin. The gate for this was a record $3.5 million. It was the largest ever for Pennsylvania fight history. 17,000 fans, or over 17,000 fans, packed into the Wells Fargo Center to come out and support. It was just a great weekend for UFC in Philly, and really kind of helped solidify it as a legitimate sport, specifically in the city of Philly. It came 2 more times, UFC 133 and then UFC on ESPN in 2019. Some other random news and notes from this day. In 2008, Juan Samuel was inducted into the Wall of Fame. If you're a longtime listener of this podcast, you know how I feel about that. No need to get into that and ruin the mood on a Feel Good Friday. And then in 2021, the Phillies retired Roy Halladay's number 34, joining the likes of Mike Schmidt, Robin Roberts, Richie Ashburn, and Steve Carlton. Be sure to like, subscribe, review, leave a comment, all that good stuff as we try to outsmart the algorithm. Don't forget to check out Lotwin for your 3D custom hype chains. Fantasy football season is here. These things make great trophies, or an alternative to trophies, and you could create something funny for the loser in your league too. Go to lotwin.com, use the promo code TCCPOD for 10% off of your order. All right, UFC 101 was in Philly on this day in 2009. Bobby Abreu had himself a day in 1999. Phillies were supposed to play the first night game at Wrigley Field on this day in 1988, but Mother Nature had other ideas as the game ended up being postponed. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on the ultimate Philly athlete. Who did AI get wrong? Whose body part should you have used for something else? But figured we'd have some fun here on a Feel Good Friday. Question of the day, Nick Foles, is he the best acquisition in Philly sports history in the past 25 years? I say yes, but what say you? And let me know your thoughts on any other of the top 5. Good luck to the Glenmore Eagles this afternoon as they look to punch their ticket to Williamsport. We're behind you guys. We'll have more on Monday about the Phillies Rangers series. Hopefully they can break the streak that they have, losing 10 straight down in Texas. Maybe. Hopefully the Mets, who are playing the Brewers, can get banged around a little bit as well. We'll also start looking ahead to the Eagles, Browns preseason game next week. Good luck to the Union as they look to extend their lead in the Eastern Conference. Told you, Fridays are such a good show, and I'll keep you posted on what happens at the Iron Pigs game tonight. Looking forward to buying one of those bacon hats. I don't know why. I just think those bacon hats are cool. But this has been This Day in Philly Sports History for August 8th, 2025. My name's Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Feel Good Friday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.